Okay, so that frame was interesting. It didn't have anything that you would expect to see in a normal application. Didn't have a file menu, didn't have a help menu. How do we add these? Well, we need to add the JMenuBar object, and then we need to add the JMenu on the JMenuBar, and then we add a JMenu item on the JMenu, which is on the JMenuBar. If this is starting to sound like a bit of work, it is. But let's look at how it gets done with a brief side note about the difference between what this does versus what a Mac application would be. The menus do get added into the window, but if you've ever been to a Macintosh, if you've ever sat down at a Macintosh and you're a Windows user, things are a little bit confusing because the information for the menus all appear at the top of the screen, not inside of an individual window. And as you change programs, the menus change to be active to whatever program you're using. So this is one of those cases where, this object doesn't behave the way it would behave natively on a Macintosh. There's actually an interesting reason for this, and that is the efficiency of an interface is dependent upon how quickly you can get to a space on the screen. When you have a normal Windows interface, you have your window, and then inside of that window you will have your title bar, and under that title bar you will have a menu bar, and that menu bar exists somewhere else inside of a larger computer screen, right? So you have this bigger computer screen, and let me give it a slightly different layout there. Okay, so we have these objects, your application, that you can drag around the screen. And the thing is, you need to get to this location right here, which means you need to move your mouse and then slow down and stop your mouse on the appropriate space in the interface. That's okay. People have gotten used to it. We're pretty good with mouse dragging. We're pretty good with mouse dragging because when Windows was released, they put Solitaire on the as a default application. And the reason that Solitaire was given was not that they wanted you to be able to waste time and play cards. It's that we needed to teach people how to click and double click and drag. And Solitaire was a game that had all of those mouse metaphors in it. And so it's there as a teaching tool. And people got pretty good about, targeting devices. Whoops, targeting. Did I? I thought I had grouped all of those. Interesting. I did. Oh, but I can select them individually. Okay, I see what I did. So this need to, find what you're looking for, get to that location, and then stop is something that we do hundreds or thousands of times during a day while we're working with our computer interface. A little bit different than when we're working with a touch device, because there we're coming from space and just boom, dropping right onto the icon that we need. There are parts of of interfaces that need clicking and dragging. But the thing is, human-computer interaction is a very fascinating, complex intersection of technology, psychology, physical reality, biology. And one of the reasons the Macintosh has its menu bar all the way up here instead is not that they're contrarian, but the idea is if something is at the top of the screen, if you take your mouse cursor and just fling it to the top of the screen, it's going to hit the upper border of the monitor and stop. You know, it's like there's no place else for it to go, which means that any menu items here, instead of being this big, so that's the target that you're trying to hit. With a Macintosh, the effect is that this button, or this menu target, is infinitely large. It just goes on forever because the screen border will stop you. So you just have to get your mouse in the general vicinity. And it was an interesting design decision. So there are a number of authors that talk about human-computer interaction. Alan Cooper, the creator of Visual Basic, Jacob Nielsen, who's a usability guru that companies pay tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring in and improve their products. Don Norman, the author of the Design of Everyday Things, which considers affordances and how we interact with not just computer systems but all systems. So if this is something that kind of is like, oh, I'd like to know more about that, drop me a line and I will be happy to point you towards some different resources. And you should also know that Professor Steve Caruso teaches courses in the interactive multimedia major, which talks about human-computer interaction and design. So that's part of the interactive design major, and you might try to get into some of those courses as well. Okay, so we have the J menu bar, the J menu item. So if we were to add menus, we could make a method to do that to try to keep it contained. So we'll pass the frame in, and we can make a new menu bar item and set that menu bar to be a menu bar for the frame. Make a file menu item. So we will make a menu, JMenu item, and we will have the text read file and call it file menu. And then we can add that menu to the menu bar. And then we can make a JMenu item with the text open on it and make that a menu item object and add that to the file menu object. And then we can also create another menu item named quit named quit item that has the visual display of the word quit, and we can add that to the menu bar. All of this is how visual interfaces get constructed. It's objects inside of objects inside of objects, and the process to make them involves and generates a lot of code. When I was an undergraduate, our college had just gotten Macintoshes, so this was, probably I guess it was almost 5 years after the introduction of the Mac. Is that true? Yeah, it was pretty early on. So Mac was released in '84. I was doing this work in '89 and '90. And rather than doing my final senior thesis on the mainframe, I opted to do it on the Mac. But what I didn't realize was how much code I would write, which was just designing the interface. So at the end of the day, I had fewer actual solutions that was able to write because I was actually spending most of my time, the bulk of my time, writing interface code. And it was only afterwards that I learned that Apple had a piece of software that would write the interface that I realized that a lot of what I had learned, while it was fascinating, was also of limited utility. So as we're going through this, just keep in mind that you'll use a tool like NetBeans or Eclipse and you'll draw out your interface and it will generate these objects. And we're going to be spending our time in our project actually working with an interface that has been generated and hooking into that and making it do something interesting. So with that as precursor, when we come back, we'll talk about handling events.